Part 5. Welcome back, guys, and in this video we are about to get into some deep water. I will warn you that some of the topics discussed in this video will be distressing to some viewers, so if you want to navigate around that, there is a list of chapters below this video. Watch at your own discretion. We have already talked about the creator of Scientology, Mr. L. Ron Hubbard, LRH to his friends, but we haven't talked about who's in charge now. That man goes by the name of Mr. David Miscavige. David Miscavige was born April 30th, 1960. He joined Scientology after his father, Ron Miscavige, became interested in Scientology. Apparently, after a 45-minute session of Dianetics, David's asthma was cured. At just 12 years old, David Miscavige was Scientology's youngest auditor. The church describes him as a prodigy. He joined the Sea Org at age 16 and quickly rose in the ranks. He became a part of Hubbard's messengers and ran the group by the time he was 19 years old. When Hubbard died in 1986, David Miscavige became captain of the Sea Org. According to ex-members, a flag order, which is like an official notice put out by the church, a flag order was issued the day after his death, and in this it appointed Pat Broker and Amy Broker as loyal officers to take charge of the church.
OT9 and OT10 are also written up. Finished. There are several other OT levels that it is my job to compile.
Pat and Amy Broker were with L. Ron Hubbard in the last weeks of his life, so it made sense that he would appoint them to be the new leaders. But just one day after this order came out, Pat and Amy Broker mysteriously resigned, and all of the little leaflets that they had sent out were gathered up, and a new flag order was issued. It has been reported by JB, who is Hubbard's driver and David Miscavige's handyman, that Miscavige would intimidate and threaten people into leaving. They say that he was taking out the highest ranking officers one by one, so nobody could challenge him on his position of power. David Miscavige disconnected from his own family. Jenna Miscavige has actually spoken out publicly against him.
He frequently got half pay or even no pay. Full pay is only $45. I was told that I was forbidden to call my parents. I was not allowed to go back to California. When I was about to, I was told that I could not go back and be with my parents and my brother. I was actually physically restrained from doing that. And we only went to school once a week when we were there.
As well as his late father, Ron Miscavige.
I was a Scientologist for 42 years.
Were you raised in it?
No, I got my family in 1970. But I was in the church for 42 years. The last 26 and a half years, I worked at the international base in Hemet, California. I escaped from that base on March 25th, 2012.
And David's wife, Shelley Miscavige, hasn't been seen in public since 2005. To date, David Miscavige has only ever made one TV appearance on ABC News Nightline.
I don't know that Scientology lends itself so well to the press. In this instance, we did agree that we would have your correspondence come in, and in fact, he did have unlimited access to the church. But then you get a piece like this. For instance, something that isn't mentioned in there is that every single detractor on there is part of a religious hate group called Cult Awareness Network and their sister group called American Family Foundation. Now, I don't know if you've heard of these people, but it's the same as the KKK would be with the blacks.
You realize there's a little bit of a problem in getting people to talk critically about the Church of Scientology because, quite frankly, they're scared.
Oh, no. Well, I'm telling you. Let me explain something to you. The most disingenuous thing is that you have those people. Now, let's not give the American public the wrong impression that these are people that randomly were pulled in from around the world and that they decide to talk against Scientology. Those people aren't scared. And here's what I find wrong, and here's what I find a common mistake the media makes. I can get you 100,000 Scientologists who will say unbelievably positive things about their church to every one you had on there. And I not only am upset about those people not being interviewed, they are too. Well, in Scientology, you don't do anything for somebody else. Scientology is something that requires somebody's active participation.
Then, fine.
Certainly, let me explain something.
I want to participate. I want to be active.
Okay, what in your life,
theoretically.
what in your life do you not feel is right that you would like handled?
I feel perfectly comfortable with my life. I like my job. I'm happy with my family. I love my wife. I'm healthy. I'm perfectly content. That's why I'm asking you, what is it you can do for me?
Well, number one, I would never try to talk you into that Scientology is for you. You see, that's the funny thing about this, is if I'm now going to give a sales pitch to you on Scientology, believe me, Scientology is valuable enough that it doesn't require any sales pitch. But let's look at it this way then, what Scientology does. If you look out across the world today, you could say that if you take a person who's healthy, doing well, like yourself, you'd say that that person is normal, not a crazy, not somebody who's a psychotic. You look at a wall and they call it an elephant. Would you agree with me on that?
So far, I got no problem.
And you can see people below that.
Right.
And crazy people, criminals, that I think society in general will look at and say that breed of person hasn't something quite right because they're not up to this level of personality. You can understand that. Well, we in Scientology are not, you see, all past attempts have been to bring man up to somebody's standard of what's normal. What we're trying to do in Scientology is take somebody from this higher level and move them up to greater ability. You see, we're interested in...
What about those folks down there?
Well, yes, no, we don't ignore them, but my point is this. Scientology is there to help the able become more able.
Now, the interview, I will leave a link for it below if you want to go and watch it. David Miscavige no longer speaks to the press. The most recent clip we actually have of him is his introduction video on the Scientology.tv YouTube channel, where he introduces the channel and all of its happenings. The Scientology.tv YouTube channel came out in 2018, and it even streams live content 24 hours a day, in case you just can't get enough. But I suppose if you're in it and your media is restricted, you know, at least there's always something on. David Miscavige no longer speaks to the press or in public. You'd be lucky to get an interview with him now, I think. Dazza, if you want to come on the channel, let me know. But there is someone who does speak for Scientology, and her name is Pat Harney. Pat Harney is the Public Relations Director of Scientology. In this interview, she talks about how she got into Scientology and some of the core beliefs of the church. She mentions that she has experienced discrimination and shocked from people in the streets when she tells them she's in Scientology purely because of the colour of her skin. The reason people are shocked is because historically, Scientology has a racist past. The church has been accused of being racist due to the fact that when it first started, it was pretty much exclusively white people, and some of the video recordings of L. Ron Hubbard and even some of the texts are pretty derogatory.
Have you ever noticed how a Negro in particular, down south, where they're pretty close to the soil, personifies mess? The gate post and the wagon and the whip and anything around there, a hat. Hey, they talk to him, you know. What's the matter with you, hat? They imbued him with personality.
Portrait of a Negro hiding in a coal cellar at midnight, which is simply this black thing. Right? Still a picture. It doesn't have any features.
One of the ways David handled the church executives was by sending them to a place called the Hole. The Hole is a prison made up of a pair of double-wide trailers located on Scientology's Gold Base, a compound near the town of Hemet in Riverside County, California. The windows are reinforced with steel bars, and a security guard monitors the only door in and out of the building 24/7. Reportedly, up to 100 executives could be crammed into the hole at one time. They lived in degraded conditions and were fed slop and made to sleep on the floor.
Nobody can contemplate walking in to the hole and staying there if they just come from the outside world. And that's what's hard for anybody to understand, is none of the people that were in the hole had just walked out of, a job at the Village Voice. They're all people who had years and years and years of indoctrination into this is how things are, and this is what's right, and this is what's acceptable, and this is what you tolerate, and here's what you put up with. That incremental increase in degradation that occurs, and it takes a long time, and pretty soon you're at somewhere where you look and you go, are you kidding me?
So what does a day in the hole look like? Well, the majority of the day is members trying to figure out what evil intentions they have towards David Miscavige.
Like, for more than a year, I slept on the fucking floor and I was fed slop, and I was in a building that had bars on the doors and windows. I wasn't allowed out, and I was supposed to sit around in there and circle jerk myself into fucking a new state of existence where now I'm suddenly acceptable to Miscavige because I've confessed to, whatever heinous things satisfied his prurient sense of right and wrong. If I could pummel someone else into admitting shit that he likes to hear, that's even better than if I do it. It is like the lunatic asylum. It's like one flew over the cuckoo's nest.
Members report turning on each other and trying to get each other to confess their evil intentions, which often resulted in verbal and physical fights. A few members have described it like a Lord of the Flies situation, which makes sense if they're being deprived their very basic needs. According to members, David Miscavige would come in and play twisted games. Most famously, a twisted musical chairs game set to the music of Bohemian Rhapsody.
One night, Miscavige comes into the hole with a boombox.
He said, I'm going to teach you all a lesson. We're all going to play musical chairs.
And musical chairs is a Scientology administrative term for when you move people from different posts rapidly and you create instability.
Playing that music and stop it and everyone will have to grab a chair.
And there's one person left standing.
The last person who remains gets to stay. Everybody else, you're expelled, you're going to be thrown out of the Sea Org. These people were fighting to stay in the hole.
But then nothing happened. Out of the goodness of my heart, you can stay. But you better come clean. I better have some good confessions out of you.
It's reported that he made members crawl around on the floor, made them stand in water under freezing air conditioning units, and physically beat them or instructed them to beat each other. According to Mike Rinder, they are gradually taught to accept this treatment. Even if the police stormed into the hole tomorrow, nothing would happen, because members would most likely say that they wanted to be there, and nothing would be done about it. If any of them actually spoke out to the police, that would be seen as the most ultimate betrayal to David Miscavige. One member, Debbie Cook, was locked in the hole, and after her escape, she took them to court. And this is what she said.
Could you give us some idea, in your own words, of after you're in there for 4 or 5 or 6 weeks, how do you feel as a human being?
You feel completely degraded, very, very sort of terrified that you may have to go through another one of these confessions, or maybe that you would get beaten up, or, you're also, because you haven't been sleeping, you're in a horrific mental state.
And you were a 40-something-year-old woman with a very, very respected job.
Yes.
In 2005, did you learn about the hole?
Yes, I did.
How did you find out about it?
Mr. Miscavige briefed me about it and explained that that he had put about 40 executives of Scientology International into, basically locked up into a room called The Hole. And he took me there personally and showed me.
What was the first thing that you witnessed that personally horrified and frightened you?
I witnessed Mr. Miscavige physically punching in the face and wrestling to the ground another very senior executive at Scientology International level.
Members that escaped the hole have said they had ants crawling on them while they slept, and they were only allowed outside of the hole to shower or attend church events. When Mike Rinder appeared on John Sweeney's BBC documentary, Scientology and Me, he had just come straight from the hole. He was sent to be a part of the documentary to deny claims that Miscavige had ever beat him. According to him, this is the moment that made him realise he had to leave. He made his escape in London after filming. People don't just go to the hole for a couple of days or weeks. It can be months or years of living in these conditions. Another interesting clip is this clip from Anderson Cooper 360. The wives of some of the members in the hole were brought onto the show to deny any claims that David Miscavige had physically abused anyone.
Obviously, your ex-husbands have made charges against David Miscavige, saying that they have seen repeated acts of physical violence perpetrated by Mr. Miscavige. Is any of that true?
No. Not one ounce of it. Not one. I mean, I slept with Tom DeVock for almost 20 years. I knew every inch of him. If he ever complained about something, if he had a headache, if he had a backache, he had me rub his feet at night. I mean, I was his wife. I never saw one scratch. I never saw one bruise. I never saw one black eye. Nothing. Nor did he complain about anything personally. And he would have told me, because anything that would happen, I would know about. And besides that, that's not the character of Mr. David Miscavige. Nothing like that. It's outrageous that these men are doing that, and they're bitter, and they're getting attention from the media.
And you were married to Marty Rathbun?
15 years. I know the man better than anybody else. Now, you gotta understand, Marty Rathbun is a liar, okay? When he left, he's alleging that when he left in 2004, it was because he witnessed Mr. Miscavige beating somebody up or whatever. Right after he left, I'm the first person he called. He called me right away. And it never came up. He never mentioned it, okay?
He says that he did mention it to you.
No, he did not. Absolutely not. It's a lie.
Catherine, you were married to Jeff Hawkins?
Yes, I was married to Jeff Hawkins during the entire time of these allegations that he said apparently happened. I was, we were very close, obviously. We were married. He used to tell me about everything he did, the meetings he went to, etc. He never mentioned one thing. To the contrary, he mentioned to me how much Mr. David Miscavige supported him, how much he believed in him.
And Catherine, you were married to Mike Rinder.
Yeah, I
awfully
was.
long time. He says that he was beaten by David Miscavige some 50 times. And multiple people have also said that they saw Mike Rinder bearing the brunt of David Miscavige's
Mike Rinder, Mr. Miscavige never laid a hand on Mike Rinder. I lived with Mike Rinder for over 35 years. I know every square inch of Mike Rinder's body. I know everything that's ever happened to him, every accident, every time he broke his wrist.
So I think you're being quite rude and quite insulting. Here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line. There is no history of violence in the church.
If you wanted to break into Gold Base, you'd be hard-pressed, but breaking out is perhaps even more difficult. 911 cannot be contacted from inside the base. There are spiked fences with 3-inch blades, motion detectors, infrared scanners, underground microphones, cameras, floodlights, and a sniper's nest. Not to mention a security team specifically drilled on recovering escapees. Jackson Moorhead was a Sea Org member and security chief at Gold Base.
Yeah, all my involvement in the Sea Org, 90% of it was involved being at the base and anything and everything at base.
he joined when he was just 16 and left after he and his wife were pressured to have an abortion. He reports recovering hundreds of people who tried to escape. They needed to keep people inside Gold Base because they would have been privy to information and witness to David Miscavige's abusive behaviour. It was so crucial for them to retrieve these people that they actually have a protocol for it. It's called the blow drill. The term blowing in Scientology means an unauthorised exit from the church. People have escaped in the boots of cars, on motorbikes, and some had planned their escape for weeks before it happened. A failed escape will result in severe punishment. Once it's known that someone is out of the base, the blow drill is put into action. Cars will be sent out to try and find the person, sometimes resulting in a full-on car chase. They will even contact the airport to see if the escapee has any flights booked, and they check local taxis to see if anybody has been picked up in the area. They'll usually send someone to their parents' house or their next of kin, whoever's related to them, and tell them to wait there just in case they show up. Ugh, literally gives me the creeps. If they are caught and recovered, they will be taken back and either sent to the hole or the RPF for correction. But it should be known that they have denied all of these allegations. If you are a child in Scientology, there are a few places you could end up. You could go to a Scientology school, which we've talked about. You could join the Sea Organisation, which we've talked about. Or you could go to the ranch. No, not the Dr. Phil Ranch, but the Mace Kingsley Ranch. Mace Kingsley Ranch School was a camp where parents could send their children who needed some good old-fashioned Scientology discipline. It's for children aged 8 to 17 and opened in 1987. It was initially based in Palmdale, California before moving to a property in New Mexico. The school's curriculum focused heavily on the teachings of Scientology. Students were subject to pseudoscientific processes such as the purification rundown and daily auditing. A large portion of each day was dedicated to cleaning and general manual labour. The school received criticism over the years for the treatment of students under its care. It was eventually closed in 2002. Tara Reel attended the ranch for 2 years. Her parents paid $150,000 to send her there. Once there, she was subject to intense physical labour. She was punished, and her punishment was even photographed. Nathan Rich attended the school for almost 4 years. He reported that he was often dirty as a result of running around in the dirt, and one morning during muster, the ranch staff took the young boy outside for what they called a GI shower. All the other children were made to watch as he was cleaned with a metal fence brush. He also mentioned that as a punishment for smoking, he was hit with a wooden paddle. The paddle had holes drilled into it and indentations where other kids had been hit too. Wally Hanks, the employee at the 1990s Scientologist-run Mace Kingsley Ranch in New Mexico, was heard terrorizing a child on an audio tape. I will warn you, this clip is quite distressing and upsetting, so listen at your own discretion.
Okay, I'll just let you live here.
I'll let him do it, okay? Just don't hold me. I'll let him do it for him.
Okay?
I'll let him fucking do
That's
it.
right. If he wants to do it, he can get me. Stand over here.
Come here, go over there.
Okay, 6 to the back. 6 to the back. Stand here. We're going to do this. No, he's going to stand here, you'll stand here like I'm trying to get my command. Over this way.
Oh, I was fucking hurting my head.
It's going to hurt. That's the purpose of it. You ready? Lean forward. Lean forward. Marco, I've had this myself. Marco, it doesn't give me pleasure to do this. Look at the picture of LRH right there. Marco, Marco, look at that picture of LRH. Marco, Marco, look at that picture of LRH. This is his policy. Look at the picture of LRH. All right. You got 5 more coming. fuck no, man. I got 5 more. That's enough, man. Come on, Mark. Come on.
Will you hold on to me? Let the thing go away.
Mark, it's going to be, the longer it takes, the more it hurts. So turn around.
Can you see the policy?
I'll show it to you after this is done. Right now, this is the justice action. Turn around, let me put you over. Let you know when it is. I know it hurts. Okay, what's up?
Don't even you hit my... Dude, you don't hit my butt, man.
I'm trying to get you. I'll put you in the back. Look down. Want to go to the battle?
No.
Let's go. Let's get over it. I don't mind doing this.
That's it.
All right, okay. Come in. Marco. You took it out of my hand.
I don't want you, man.
Take my hand. Marco, take my hand. Marco. I did not enjoy doing that. Take my hand.
I want to get kicked off me.
You don't have a choice.
I'm going to do anything possible to get
You
kicked off.
don't have your choice. Take my hand. Okay, sit down in this chair. I said sit down in the chair. Now, I mean it. Sit down.
Don't yell at me, man.
I said sit down in the chair. Stop! Don't threaten me with scissors, man. If you want to leave, you can do so at the condition of doubt, Marco.
I can what?
You can leave if you want to when you do doubt. I did not enjoy doing that. Please keep him here while I take a break and get my TRs back in, please.
There is a base called the Church of Spiritual Technology, located in New Mexico. It features a house built into the side of a mountain, a helipad, and a large symbol etched into the ground that can only be seen from above. This base is set for L. Ron Hubbard's return. The symbol carved into the ground looks very similar to the logo of L. Ron Hubbard's favourite cigarettes, and is there so he can find his way back when he returns. Inside the house leads to a secret underground vault. This vault, which is 20 feet in diameter and extends 375 feet into the hill, allegedly contains copies of everything L. Ron Hubbard ever wrote. An article by Scientology International News goes into more detail about the extreme measures taken to preserve the works of L. Ron Hubbard. It says, CST brought in paper design engineers, chemists, and scientists to formulate the ideal archival paper to carry LRH's works through future millennia. Hubbard's wisdom was recorded with special ink derived from a 1,000-year-old Chinese formula on paper made of cotton and linen, far surpassing the most stringent standards for permanent archival records. And in case that fails after a few centuries, Hubbard's words were also carved onto custom-made stainless steel plates. They used a chemical etching process dating back to the Middle Ages. These plates were then wrapped in acid-free sleeves and placed in the vault. For audio recordings of Hubbard's lectures and other public speeches, CST archivists developed a procedure for producing metal records with the highest fidelity and durability, perfect for their purpose down to the molecular level. This is some high-tech preservation going on here, guys. These records will last at least 1,000 years. They used records just in case like society completely collapses and technology is gone. The idea being that you could get a thorn and put it on the record and it would be able to make the sound. So, film footage of Hubbard was likewise painstakingly transferred and stored like the records and written documents. These are stored in titanium boxes, and the article describes it as The perfect time capsule designed to accommodate any and all climatic changes and withstand radioactive fallout. Gotta give it to them, they thought of everything. These boxes were then placed inside thermal containers that have a ceramic core, which is designed to protect against the re-entering of the atmosphere, like in a spaceship. But that's not all. They're also coated in silicone and have a fine mesh stainless steel reinforcement. And that's not all. The thermal containers were then stored inside the vault on double-decker racks designed to hold 2,000 pounds apiece and wrapped in a heat-reflective protective covering made from synthetic fabric with a strength-to-weight ratio 5 times stronger than steel. And finally, so many steps, oxygen was removed from the vaults and replaced with a preservation base. They called this the ultimate preservation system. And quote, a massive undertaking aimed at safeguarding our religion and securing our technology for all millennia to come. That's all for part 5. In the 6th and final part of this series, we are going to be looking at some of the mysterious deaths and disappearances, and we're also going to be trying to answer the question, is Scientology a cult? And where is Shelley? That's all from me for now, and I'll see you there.